All right, thanks. Hey guys, welcome to our August Fix My Hog event. As many of you know me, I'm Tommy Clutch Creal with High Compression Garage and Chopper College. We're going to be kind of running through part 2 of the gas tank build out that we started last week with a few more tips and tricks for all you guys, and run through that. But before I get into things, as always, make sure you check out the banner. There's a PDF you can download for the fall apparel that's going on with Fix My Hog, and it's obviously some good stuff still, so make sure to check that out. To start things off, and just to recap what we did in the part 1, we were going through the English wheel, showing how that works with the different anvils at the bottom. We went through some of the items with the dollies and how to form metal in the corners. And then we didn't get into the planching hammer, but we did use the shrinker and stretcher far back here in the corner and use that on these sides to get our contour. So remember, when working with metal and in general, you can never really go wrong with it. You can always fix it. So last time we were working on the top piece. What we did after that show is we peeled backwards and started a different gas tank for you guys. I had an idea this one might be just a tad bit easier to comprehend, and that was going to be a pretty significant build. So what we did to kind of get ahead here is we had this middle part stamped out on the top sheet right here, and work the corners. We're going to work a couple corners on this during this segment, and then also finish out the side panels on this tank and weld it in the tunnel. Now, there's 2 different types of ways to feed the fuel. It's obviously gravity fed out of these gas tanks, so that's an EFI. You're going to be putting a different bottom piece on here, like you can see right there, or you're going to be using a petcock, and I'll get to that later on where to put it and how to make sure you're in the right for that. So that's pretty much. So we're going to dive into things today and start with a little bit of continue to work on this top piece to make sure it forms nicely to here. We're going to go through a little bit of TIG welding and weld this tank up for the most part, and hopefully by the end of it we'll have a near completed gas tank for us to work with. So all right, to get into it, let me get my glasses. I mentioned last time, and it's always good to clean the metal before you're doing anything with it. So we're going to take the grinder and kind of get some of this rust off, because it's been sitting around for a few weeks on these corners. Groove down and get these burrs out of here, and then we're going to run it through the English wheel to get a better contour to fit. We're going to be needing some spacing on here, so we're going to run it through there again. Just simple side grinder. You can obviously use air grinders, die grinders, all that kind of stuff, but I choose to use these electric ones. They're pretty quick with metal, and you can control it a lot easier of how far in depth you're going to go down on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these sides up real quick, and then as you can see, this piece we kind of cut a little bit lopsided right there, so we'll round that out, make sure it contours the bottom well. So you can see a little bit better now. These corners are all the rust is gone on here. We're down to pretty much the bare metal. And also with grinding, one big thing that I recommend to people is to consistently go in a circular motion. Rather than just holding the die grinder or an air grinder like this, go in a circular pattern. That makes sure you don't get flat spots in the metal, and you don't have to build that up with either welding it back up or a new piece of metal. So try to go in a circular motion all the way through, and you're going to get a better finish at the end as well. All right, so now that we got the top piece in better shape than it was, we're going to move on to the tunnel. Now, when we started going through and putting these together, I left this bottom portion open as well as the top portion right here, just so if we need to split the tank, pull it a little bit farther apart, or bring it in, we have enough metal to work with here. So when putting this one on, this back section we have is going to be a little bit off, so we're going to have to fill that up with metal. But as you can see, we're pretty close right now. And what I typically recommend when building your gas tanks is to leave the tunnel till the end unless you're absolutely sure that top piece is going to fit on. So, and the reason being is once you tack weld these on, you're going to be able to reach through on the bottom with a hammer and dowel and get that fine contour finish. Unlike if we were to put it on and you had a big area in here that was flat, you'd have no access to get into that inside the gas tank. So it's always better to kind of leave that area open. But for the most part, I think we're good. And what I'm checking for right now, you can see a little bit larger on here. So when we're going to weld this in and tack it in, we're going to bring these sides together side by side and lay our tacks down all around. So we're not going to actually want to tack one after another on this side because it's going to contour the metal and bring that side up. What we'll be doing is placing a tack here, a tack on this side, and alternating on both sides. So that'll be key for us to get going. My partner in crime back there needs to bring the camera up a little bit. Can you bring that camera up just a tad, bud, so they can see? You can see this bottom portion as well that we're working on. When I cut in here, we need to fill that all in. So I typically put another piece of metal, add on to these sides, but for today, what we'll do is we'll lay a couple tacks down, see if we can get that. It's a pretty significant amount, but we'll see what we can do. All right, we're going to be running with the TIG welder. Plug this sucker in. As I mentioned last time, TIG welding is the preferred method to getting these tanks all together because you get a cleaner weld out of it rather than a MIG welder, but you can MIG weld these. And there was also a question about brazing these tanks. You absolutely can, but obviously it's a little bit harder and different size of talent needed to do that, but it will hold up when you do your pressure test and leak down test with these as well. All right, so what I'm adjusting here on the TIG welder is the amperage coming out. That defines what thickness of metal we're going to be using. So we're more using the 16 gauge metal right here. So we're going to lower the amperage and make sure we don't actually go right through the metal. So if you're using more of a 1/4 inch, you're going to jack the amps all the way up, get that thing ready to rock, and go that route. All right. I think we're good here. So I'm going to start in the front here. Like I said before, the bottom was already done in here. We actually cut 2 slices in here for the tabs, but I'm going to start right here in the front, place a couple tacks, and go from there. Now with TIG welding, you have tungsten at this end. This is where your pulse is coming out. And unfortunately, you can't use magnets with these because it will deter it'll make your pulse sporadic all the way through. All right. And then you also want to sharpen these. When you buy tungsten, you're going to see that they're at a flat point. You want to sharpen these so they're more of a, have a triangular look or a diamond in the front where it's a very fine point. Otherwise, it's going to jump all over. And then let's get this going. And then filler metal is the other point of TIG welding. You're going to want to make sure you're using the right diameter and the right filler metal for the right application. So aluminum obviously has a different kind, and you don't want to mix those up because you're not going to get the result you want. All right, so we're going to adjust my seating here so you're comfortable. Pull the tungsten out. Tighten it up from the back. I typically recommend using just about that much length coming out of the cup here on the torch. And I'm just going to make sure we're ready to go on this. All right. You can see we did a quick tack on there. I'm using a larger gauge filler metal just because of the gap we have. If it was a flush mount, we could easily just go through it, sometimes not even needing filler metal. However, this time we do. So we're going to go a few more on here. Flip this around, make sure you're comfortable while you're doing all your welding. The piece is in a good spot. All right. Take your time while you're welding. All right, another tack. We're going to do a few more here, and then we're going to work on the top piece and get that in place. All right, one more. All right. So now we've got 3 on there. I'm actually going to clean this one up just a little bit. When you hear that jumping, that means you're arcing. Perfect. All right, so now in the front, what we have, we've got three simple tacks. 4, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that's going to make sure that nothing maneuvers or shifts on us as we start working the top section. What I like to do sometimes is either take a flathead if we need to pry the edges up on here so we can actually move these corners out and make sure we're getting a flush mount. There we go, now the fan's on me. And work from there. However, as I showed you earlier, now you can see that we have a pretty significant gap. So we're going to take this piece and shrink the sides down real quick, allowing us to get a better fit. I'm gonna pull the shrinker out here. Now be careful, that metal's hot after you're welding, so it's easy to just go on there and grip. So this was the section that we were having bow out a little bit. We want to bring it in just a little bit to get flush on there, so we're just going to work these 6 inches right here, and then we'll measure that side. And this typically is already pretty well fit if you're welding these side panels in, so sometimes you'll have to do this extra work towards the end. Just put in the jaws, work it left to right, and the pressure as well. You can adjust as needed. All right. So now this has come in just a little bit, just where we want it. And you can see now that area that we just worked on is getting a better fit right there. So we're in a good place. So we're actually going to do the rest of that as well and bring that in all the way down this side. Again, we're doing this because we want to bring that metal in. If we needed to bring it out, we'd use the stretcher on here. All right. You could put it in about 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch into the jaws and work it that way. I typically just do it about 1/2 inch, and that works just fine. All right. Again, we just did all that. Now it should be fitting a little bit better just by those slight areas to shrink. Much better. This bottom section is going to be the only section that we actually have to work out. So in the beginning, like I said, you either add more metal on here, but for today we're just going to even those out and then work from there. So, all right. Now that it's fitting a little bit better, do the same thing on this side. We're going to clean up the sides to make sure we have a nice surface to weld with, and then we can actually make some adjustments as needed with the hammer and dolly from there. So I just want to do a couple areas in the front. We don't need so much in the back. So I'll also help your coordination, and if you're looking to get in the gym, work with metal. All right, we're fitting a little bit better now. We can work with that. All right, now we're going to take it down with the grinder. And then we'll start tacking it away. And you can see that there's a lot of burrs over here and indentations, and we'll work with that when we get there. Hopefully that's not too loud in the mic. All right, Zach, can you grab me one of the hammers over there? We're gonna take in those corners now. From our marks of shrinking with the jaws, it's gonna, might be able to see now the mallets, but that's all right. I'll work with that one. There's you can see the jaw marks with the lines and streaks going through. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take the dolly on this end before we get the top on and get those evened out so it's not so wavy. It's going to be a lot more difficult to put it in the English wheel right now. And then, yeah, you can leave them right there, thanks. And get them all sorted out. So we'll take that. I'm just going to use a regular hammer. So we have them up here. You'll see hammers that have more of a spiral end to it right here. That's also a shrinking hammer where you can use it the same effect as a shrinker and stretcher. So that's another little investment that if you're not looking to spend some good amount of money on a new shrinker and stretcher, you can just simply do that. Now I like to put it on here regardless, just so it'll stay stationary for me. So all I'm going to be doing is just working this through. Even these out. Now, also, these have different radiuses on them. You can see this one's a larger radius and this is a smaller one, depending on what kind of contour you want to get on these sides. So rather than me switching around, all I'm doing right here is as I'm banging the metal in, I'm actually pulling the dolly out just a little bit to allow it to get a little bit more of a curve in there. So we're just going to work this all the way down. And we need a little more here. All right, that looks a lot better. It's a lot smoother inside here rather than being more wavy. And you may need to continue to do this. It may take half an hour, it may take 5 minutes, it may take 2 hours to get all this stuff done, but it's obviously going back and forth to make sure that metal is a perfect fit where you want it. So in this kind of case, what we'd look, you might have to go back and sand this back down, but we're still good on that end. I'm actually work this corner a little bit. And the fun stuff about metal is where you're hitting a spot, shrinking it, there's going to be another piece that either bows out or takes a different shape. So that's what you have to keep an eye on when not only just building gas tanks, but also when you're going into even fenders, oil tanks, things like that. It's going to continue to not warp necessarily, but it's going to just give you a little bit more work to do for you. All right, so we're going to do the same thing on this side. There's a big burr and indentation right here, and same thing back here. So we're just going to do a couple on that end. That's looking not too bad. So you can see it's a little bit more straighter here and following the lines. So I'm just going to hit this to get that burr out of there. All right. Much better. All right. Now from this back section, when we welded this back piece, like I said, it tweaked and everything. So what I'm going to do, just to make it less of a headache, is I'm going to take down this part that's the high spot on the metal to allow this to slide back and get in position with the rest of the tank. And then from there, what we can do is add some metal in there, or you could redo the top piece towards the end. So I'm just going to take that down real quick, and then we can work with it from there. All right, we're making progress. Here we go. So now here comes the tricky part. Now when you're using magnets with TIG welding, like I said, you typically can't do that. So I'm going to place one right up here at the front because we're going to be welding back here in this section just to tack it down. And then we're going to pull them off and then just use it by hand or with that flathead screwdriver just to hold that metal up. So let's check fitment again on this top piece. We're looking pretty darn close on there. And then, yep, I almost have to say that we're going to have to come in a little bit more. So we got the top piece working, but you can see that the corners are a little bit off. We're going to be welding it right there. So we're going to pull these in. I'm going to actually do the top piece and pull those in, and that way we can try avoiding using that larger piece more. And after working with this, we may just have to use the dolly and hammer again. All right. It's always a tedious process working with metal. And if you're a beginner and trying to get into it as a trade or just a hobbyist or a career, make sure, try not to get too frustrated with working with it right off the bat. It does take time and a lot of patience to start working with it and get down a nice routine. So don't get too discouraged right off the bat. And I'm just doing front to back, right to left, to bring these corners in just a little bit more. I don't want to go too far up because that front end was fitting fairly nicely for us, so we can always go back and redo that. So again, these corners, you can see we brought them in just a little bit more. Got more of a contour right in here. It's far better. All right. All right. So all I'm going to do, get this evened out, and then we're going to tack this thing on. Looking pretty good. Make sure if you guys have questions or anything, you drop it in that comment section over there, and I can try to get to it by the end of this event for you as well. All right, now we're making progress. Now you can see the only adjustment now that we're going to make is just to this right area right in here, because it's showing a lot more space than needed. So make that quick adjustment, and then we'll get it on. All right. Check fitment again. You'll see if you're doing this in your garage or as a career or in your shop, you're going to be continuing to go back and forth making minor adjustments on these tanks, but it always makes for an easier round at the end. So, all right, we're getting there. So now we're going to do, get this welder ready and tack this thing up. Get some magnets. Toss me two. We're going to see if we can actually pinch some of the back down rather than using a magnet off the bat. And I don't think we're going to be able to do that. Out of midair, out of nowhere. This top's really giving us a fun time today. All right. So we're going to try getting as flush as we can. Top section. We're going to have to do a lot more metal work to the top, but we're right about there. All right. And then we'll adjust the sides as needed after we place that first. But for the most part, we've got it centered on there, and then we'll tweak it working the way all the way backwards. If you guys are starting to get into metalwork, and the other thing is maybe recommend doing a fender or a C-pan to start out with. Fenders are typically pretty easy just because you're just rolling the same radius all the way through and then bending the sides in. If you're doing a wide size tire, 250, 300s, those are a lot easier to work on than some of the standard ones with like a bead running through the top. So I'm going to actually turn up the heat, just the amperage up just a little bit. Make sure our tungsten is good. And then, nice and careful, we're going to place a quick tack at the top up here, another one right here, and if we can, without moving too much metal, we'll do one right over there as well. That's typical. All right, we've got one tack. We're gonna lay another one over here. And the best approach with this is to tack all the way around your tank, and then you'll do your full bead all the way through. All right, so now we've got this thing looking like Frankenstein up here. Towards the front. So those two tacks, we're going to eventually have to bring this in when we're tacking the sides, just so we get that same radius all the way through. So we're going to start tacking all the way around these corners, and then we'll start with the sides and bringing those in. And all I'm doing with this magnet is keeping it back here so this doesn't drop and we can actually get in there. All right, let's hit it up again. Another one, rotate to the other side. Be careful, take your time when you're welding, because at the end of building your entire gas tank, what you're going to recommended to do is put a do a pressure test to it. So what that is you're actually sealing all the openings here and running a certain amount of PSI, typically around 35, into the tank to make sure there's no major leaks. You can use soap, squirt it around. Same thing kind of as a leak down test right there. You're going to find any obscurities during that time of doing that. All right, so now that we've got a few more up here in the front, we're going to work our way and just do 2 more right here, and then 1 more, and then we're going to start working on these sides. I'm going to lose that magnet now because we're doing all right. If you ever see your arc jumping while welding, what that typically is either this is not sharp enough and you need to resharpen it and bring it down, or that you more have a ball end at there, which you don't want a ball end because your arc is just going to kind of pop all over the place. You want to be able to make sure it's precise and right where you need it. So now we're going to do 1 more on the side, and then we'll do that last one to work on those. All right, see that front? We've got those tacks in place. And if you see anything where it's not lining up on the front, don't sweat it too much right off the bat. We're gonna actually get in there and make sure we're leveling out the metal as we work through. So don't worry too much, or at all. All right, it's looking all right. What do you think, Zach? Says yeah. So now you can see we have some strong tacks. Start bringing that metal over, starting to meet here on these sides. So we're going to start working 2 on this side, rotate to this side, and then start bringing the tank in so all the panels meet together. You can also do this with MIG welding, but you're flying right through it. All right, there's one. I just heard the metal start moving on me. I'm not going to use filler on this. Maybe just a little bit there. You can see those corners now are a little bit more flush. And what we're going to do is do this side real quick. And we're going to need a flathead after this, or a file. Let's just be sure. There you go. Thank you, bud. The reason for this is now what we've got on this side is we've got a larger gap than we really want. So this gap right here. So what we typically do is if we're not using flathead, I'll use a small file, but bring it over just like that. Now we have a flush area. And we'll just leave it right in there and tack it and move your way on down. And you're going to end up probably doing this quite a bit on your tank. All right, I'm going to just do one more. We'll move this file or this flathead. See, now after doing that, that entire corner is now flush rather than have that lip or that over. No, I'm good, thanks though. You can start to see the metal, how it's trying to bow on us when we're trying to meet these corners, but we're actually gonna get down here and get that taken care of. So we're gonna do a few more on this side, work our way down here. Make sure we don't run out of time with you. And get this thing done pretty quick. And what's happening is my tungsten is actually starting to bow out a little bit, so that's why you see me popping it like that. All right. Starting to make progress down here. I'm going to go over to this side. Now we have a lip that's overhanging right here. So all we're going to do is get our pry that out a little bit so we have some more room. Right with us a little bit, so that works. There we go. I'll run this all the way through. All I'm doing is using the existing metal that's on there and melting that. All right, 3 slight tacks. We're just going to keep going. If you run into anything where you see it bowing out, now's the time to kind of hammer those areas out, which I will probably do in about 5 minutes here and show you just in case, but that'll help make sure those contours are nice and smooth up there, and then you have a nice finished piece at the end. See the incremental amounts I'm going about every ½ inch all the way through now, just because we're starting to get to some of these larger gaps where we need to pull the corners in. And now we're starting to get a pretty good fit. starting to take its shape. And if you need to, you can always take a larger vise, set of vice grips, or the rubber ones, bring them on the sides, bring it in, and that'll get you that nice flush connection you're looking for. Now, what I want to do is, when I do that, it gets that all flush again. When it's not, you're getting that gap when you bring it over. Smaller flatheads are usually easier. You can see that that gap's gone and now you have a flush area. Just got to get to stay there for you. All right. And we're going to do one more. I'm going to show you the front here. All right. You can also, so what I did on this one, I'm going to get up for a minute. I actually left a gap right there. The reason is we can still get access to it and actually beat the corners in a little bit. And now they're all taken up. That's perfect. Same thing on this side. We'll take them in a little bit. Now it's starting to take better shape. You can see over here what we're going to have to do is bring that over and then fill that in a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump ahead real quick because we have only 10 minutes to go and weld the front up here and show you how much it actually tweaks on this side if you don't have this fully tacked, so you get a good idea of that. And I'm going to run into a few questions for you guys that I saw come through and get those answered for you. All right. It's starting to move for us a little bit. At this point, this tungsten is getting a big old ball end at the end. You can see that. So the arc is actually jumping all over the place on me right here. So just to follow up with a few more things on your tank. So on your top end, you're going to need the bung somewhere, and just use a simple hole saw, insert the size of the bung that you want, and weld that or braze that in, whatever you need. There's always going to be some sort of vent in here, so make sure you're getting the right gas tank cap for that as well. Usually you're going to have, if you're doing a split tank and you're doing two pieces like this, you're going to have crossovers on the bottom section of this tank, and those typically you want to make towards either the front or the bottom side, so you're able to get as much gas as possible, number one, and then number two, that they are clearing anything that you may have on your bike. If you have a not a stock frame or chin spoiler or whatever it may be, you just want to take caution into that. Additionally, with the petcock or EFI, depending on what you're using, if you were mounting this on a, say, Jesse James Diablo type of frame, you can obviously put a Frisco style petcock back here, shoot it out this way, drop one on the side. You'll see it a lot with more of the stock applications, that they're directly right here on the left side of the bike and run into the carburetor on the right, but not necessarily needed. So you can obviously put it on the right side. The only word of caution that I tell you guys is that to make sure when you're putting that you have enough clearance for any aftermarket items that you may be putting on, or anything in the future that you might change up. So if it's just a temporary kind of thing, then obviously just put it where it's needed or where you feel it looks the best and cosmetically, and go for it with that. And then the last part is your tunnel. So on the bottom of here, you have your tunnel going through, and you can form your tunnel pretty easily. If you're making two halves of a gas tank like this and a top piece, you can take the same diameter tubing that you used or have on your bike and use some oxyacetylene, heat that up, bend it over just a piece of same diameter tubing, and get that tunnel. And then you can flatten it out with a sheet metal brake, or even there at your garage, where just simply put it right in there and bing, bang, boom, you're done with that, and put it right on up. Keep in mind that with the tunnels too, it will take, depending on how big or large it is, that will take away from your gallons. If you're looking for a 2.53 gallon size tank, it's not too significant, but something to consider along the way. And then also the clearance side of things, you want to make sure are up to par as well. So if you're going to make it steeper at one end, and make sure it slides up the backbone and has a big kick out in the front, like that first part one of the gas tank that I was showing you guys how to do the top piece, that one will really kick out. So keep in mind that it's something to keep in the back of your mind. There's a lot of moving pieces and considerations with making gas tanks, and a lot of patience. You run into stuff like this where the metal splits and it's not forming together, and you may have to go back and make a whole new back end piece, cut it right here and extend it all. You don't necessarily have to make the whole thing, but the good part about metal is you can either take away or add as much as you want where it's needed, and then you're good to go. The last piece of advice I can give you for today is, if you're running into problems with your side areas or your top piece, maybe consider just doing two half pieces. That was how I first got into building gas tank. I did two half pieces, and I must have gone through, I don't know, 5 gas tanks, and I could actually use. So bend your front end, use the English wheel, get that contour down, and you even can fold over the top with that, and then wait till the end to do the tunnel. So if you run into anything like this, or even on the top, you can still get your hammer or dolly in there, and if possible, run it through the English wheel with a very low size crown, so you're not using an anvil like that size, but completely flat, and you can run it through that way. And it also opens up some options too, design wise too, with those as well. And then the other thing with the tunnels are the mounting points. That's the last thing I want to talk with you guys about, is that either you see a lot of tanks out there that have mounting areas right up here in front, tanges or tabs that come out, and then also something potentially in the back. And the reason is just preference, but when mounting your gas tanks, you can even put blocks in the bottom here and have it directly under your backbone mounted there. Nowadays, with a lot of these road glides and street glides, all you're doing is 2 tabs in the front, slides right in, bolt in the back, and bolt in the front, and then a bolt in the back, and it's pretty simple. But if you're kind of going for a customized look into things, it's not a bad idea sometimes to explore with different mounting points. But make sure you do use a rubber isolator or grommet, and that helps prevent any cracks or infractions that could happen to your tank along the road, and for the viability and strength of it. So those are the big things with doing that. Additionally, that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of building gas tanks. Like I said, try running through with a fender, and that would probably be a good start to get used to the different kind of metals, the gauges, how they form, and also get a good use of the tools. So there's you don't need top of the line bead rollers and English wheels and ton presses and things like that, or power hammers, and you can simply make one out of your garage by going to your local hardware store and just getting a few hand tools and starting that way. But it is it's a fun adventure. So we did have a couple questions. I think I got to them, most of them in the video or this event here, but someone did ask about brazing their gas tank, and that is definitely a possibility. You can do that. There's no really downsides to it unless there are going to be leaks or anything, but if you're capable of doing that, you can definitely do that. I see a lot of people doing their bungs brazing, and then obviously their vents on the bottoms are sometimes brazed, so that's doable. And then also we had someone ask about modifying the existing gas tank that you do have, and with that, I gotta get this thing off. With modifying your existing gas tank, rather than opening your entire gas tank up, I tell people to try just doing a dummy section on it, unless you're trying to go for additional gas capacity, fuel capacity, or if it's just cosmetic. We've done tanks in the past where the left side's gas and the right side holds all the gauges and the electronics. So you can just simply put metal over the sheet metal you're on and work off that, or even add materials on the side. So that's always a good and fun step, is taking an existing tank and kind of rolling with it from there and making your adjustments if you're just getting into it. So if you have any questions going forward with this kind of stuff, make sure you let us know in the comments section or on fixmyhog.com, and we can get to those. And if you have any ideas for future videos or want to know about more fabrication items or go more in depth, let us know about that too. So have fun, get in the garage and start building that gas tank. And as always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys.